Have you ever looked at something and wondered why it exists at all? Today we're looking at every ugly plane ever built. Some were engineering masterpieces, disguised as flying disasters. Others, I genuinely don't know what the engineers were thinking. Maybe no other design could solve the problem. Maybe someone lost a bet. Either way, these aircraft weren't designed to look good. They were designed to work, and sometimes that made them terrifying to look at. If you enjoy this kind of aviation history, I've linked a few accurate aircraft replicas and reference items in the description. Completely optional, just for anyone who likes owning a physical piece of aviation history. This is Every Ugly Plane Explained. Fairchild Republic A-10 Thunderbolt II. In 1977, the United States Air Force introduces a plane soldier's love, and the Pentagon keeps trying to kill. The A-10 looks like it was designed by a committee that never spoke to each other. Twin engines mounted in pods above the rear fuselage, thick, unswept wings bristling with weapon racks, a nose built entirely around a 30mm GAU-8 Avenger cannon, so massive the aircraft was designed backward from the gun. Why so ugly? Every feature exists for survival. Those awkward engines, positioned high so ground fire can't hit both simultaneously. The chunky wings, optimized for low-speed maneuverability over battlefields, not airshow elegance. The twin tails? If one gets shot off, you still fly home. The A-10 emerged from a brutal lesson in Vietnam. Fast jets couldn't loiter over battlefields long enough to support troops. Pilots couldn't see targets clearly at 500 miles per hour. The Air Force reluctantly admitted it needed something slow, ugly, and devastating. That cannon fires 3,900 rounds per minute. Depleted uranium shells shred tanks. The aircraft returns home missing entire chunks of wing and tail. Titanium bathtub armor surrounds the cockpit, protecting pilots from ground fire that would kill them in any other aircraft. Ground troops worship it. When they're pinned down, the Warthog shows up and ends arguments. The Air Force keeps trying to retire it. Soldiers keep lobbying to save it. Fairchild Republic builds 716 A-10s. Over 280 remain in service nearly 50 years later. They call it the Warthog. It earned the name. Boeing X-32. In 2000, the only experimental aircraft to become an internet meme loses the biggest fighter contract in history. That gaping air intake creates what looks like a cheerful grin. The X-32 appears less like a fearsome warplane and more like a cartoon character, excited to see you. Not ideal for a stealth fighter meant to intimidate enemies. The stakes couldn't be higher. The Joint Strike Fighter program will produce thousands of aircraft worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Boeing and Lockheed Martin each build demonstrators. Winner takes everything. Boeing's team faces impossible competing demands. Internal weapons bays for stealth. Vertical takeoff capability for Marines. Supersonic performance for air superiority. These requirements force a thick, bulbous fuselage that sacrifices sleekness for function. In December 2001, the Pentagon announces Lockheed's X-35 wins. That design becomes the F-35 Lightning II. The X-32 becomes a punchline. Boeing insists it performed well in testing. Maybe it did. But the internet decided it was adorable rather than intimidating. Aviation forums still post that grinning intake photo. Some aircraft lose competitions. The X-32 lost and got mocked for eternity. Only 2 X-32 prototypes were built. Both survive in museums, still grinning. Links to a few related aircraft replicas and reference items are in the description if you want to explore further Ataware. Airbus Beluga ST. In 1994, Airbus builds an aircraft with what can only be described as a disproportionate forehead. The fuselage balloons above the wing, like the aircraft is experiencing a severe allergic reaction. Nobody's idea of elegance. Absolutely perfect at its job. The problem starts with European politics. Airbus has factories scattered across 4 countries. Wings built in Britain, fuselages in Germany, tail sections in Spain. These massive components need transportation to final assembly in France. Before the Beluga, Airbus relied on the Super Guppy, a modified 1940s Boeing that looked even stranger. By the 1990s, Airbus needs more capacity and decides to build its own solution, The result carries objects up to 39 metres long, with a maximum payload of 40,000 kilograms. The bulbous upper fuselage opens at the front, allowing entire aircraft sections to load through the nose. The cockpit drops below the cargo deck to make room. Function dictates form. Form turns out to resemble a whale with ambitions, hence the name. After the white beluga whale, it vaguely resembles from certain generous angles. Airbus builds 5 Beluga STs. They fly over 60 flights weekly between European facilities. In 2019, the even larger Beluga XL enters service, somehow looking stranger than the original. Stipa Caproni. In 1932, Italian engineer Luigi Stipa believes he can revolutionize aviation by putting a propeller inside a barrel. The result looks exactly as ridiculous as that suggests. A stubby, cartoonish aircraft shaped like a flying barrel with tiny wings attached. Test pilots must have questioned their life choices climbing into it. The science isn't crazy. When air flows through a constricted passage, it speeds up, the Venturi effect. Stipa theorizes that enclosing the propeller in a duct will generate more thrust from less power. The concept has merit. The execution produces something resembling a cartoon bomb. Testing at Monticello airfield reveals mixed results. Excellent low-speed handling, remarkably quiet operation, faster climb rates than aircraft of similar power. But increased drag from that barrel fuselage cancels out the benefits. Benito Mussolini's fascist government funds the project hoping for propaganda value. When the barrel plane fails to revolutionize aviation, interest evaporates. The work isn't entirely wasted. Stipa's research informs early jet development. Ducted fans eventually appear in hovercraft, drones, and modern aircraft engines. But the original Stipa Caproni remains aviation's most comically proportioned experiment. Only one was built. It no longer exists. Photographs preserve the absurdity forever. McDonnell XF-85. Goblin in 1948, the smallest jet fighter ever built, looks like an angry egg with wings. Just 15 feet long with a 21-foot wingspan that folded for storage, the Goblin was designed to fit inside the massive B-36 bomber's bomb bay. It would deploy to defend its mothership, fight off enemy interceptors, then return via a trapeze mechanism. It had no landing gear, just a steel skid for emergencies. The problem it solved was real. The B-36 could fly 10,000 miles, far beyond any escort fighter's range. Despite carrying 16-20mm cannons, the slow bomber remained vulnerable to jet interceptors. Solution: bring a tiny fighter along for the ride. McDonnell's team creates an ingeniously compact aircraft. Hermann Barkey leads the project. He later oversees the far more successful F-4 Phantom. Every inch is optimized to fit the bomb bay. The engineering impresses everyone. The aesthetics horrify everyone. Testing reveals the fundamental flaw. Hooking back onto that trapeze while both aircraft bounce through turbulence requires superhuman skill. Only one pilot, test pilot Ed Schock, ever flies it. Of 7 total flights, only 3 end in successful hookups. The rest end in emergency belly landings. In October 1949, the Air Force cancels the program when aerial refueling technology offers a better solution. The egg-shaped Goblin never sees service. 2 prototypes were built. Both survive in museums, still looking angry. Links to a few related aircraft replicas are in the description. Aviation traders. 98 Carver. In 1961, someone takes a World War II transport, adds a massive swinging nose door, and raises the cockpit into an absurd hump. The result is a flying car ferry that looks like a tadpole attempting to become an airplane. The concept comes from Freddie Laker, who later pioneers low-cost transatlantic travel. In the 1950s, he realizes cheap war surplus Douglas DC-4s could carry automobiles across the English Channel faster than ferries. The previous car ferry aircraft, the Bristol Freighter, carries only 3 cars. Laker wants 5 cars plus 25 passengers. That requires a nose door large enough to drive through. Engineering problem: the cockpit sits in the nose of a DC-4. Solution: relocate it to a bulbous raised section above the cargo deck. The resulting aircraft destroys any pretense of aerodynamic elegance. The name comes from car via air, honest about what this ungainly beast does. The Carver serves routes across the English Channel, reducing crossing time from hours by ferry to minutes by air. Wealthy travellers drive their Rolls-Royces directly into the aircraft and fly to French holidays. 21 Carvairs were converted from DC-4s. 8 were destroyed in crashes, a 38% loss rate. The Channel Tunnel eventually kills the market. The Carvair retires, leaving behind a legacy of practical ugliness. P. Zell M15, Belfagor. In 1973, Poland builds the world's only jet-powered biplane. It looks like a demon designed it. The name Belfagor comes from a demon prince of hell, notorious for seducing people with ingenious inventions that make them rich. The M15 seduces no one. Looking at it, the name seems less like dark humour and more like accurate classification. The Soviets want a modern replacement for the reliable 1940s era and two-crop duster. Polish engineers recognise biplanes work well for low-speed agricultural flying. Soviet officials demand jet propulsion to demonstrate technological superiority. The result holds multiple dubious records. World's slowest jet aircraft, at just 200 kilometers per hour. Only jet biplane ever mass-produced. According to Guinness World Records, possibly the ugliest production aircraft in history. Chemical tanks sit in huge pylons between the wings. The jet engine perches on top to keep exhaust away from pesticides. Fixed landing gear and twin boomtail add to the visual chaos. Engineers reportedly know they're building a disappointment, but have no choice. Soviet planners initially order 3,000 aircraft. Reality intervenes. The jet costs too much, requires too much maintenance, and performs worse than the ancient propeller plane it replaces. Production ends in 1981, after just 175 built. All are eventually mothballed. The indestructible An-2 keeps flying. It still operates today. The Belfagor nickname reportedly comes from the 1976 Paris Air Show, where its strange appearance and noisy engine remind observers of the demon. Watching one belch smoke across bleak Soviet farmland, the association feels earned. Some aircraft are ugly because function demands it. The Belfagor is ugly because no one stopped to ask if it had to look quite this bad.